And today I'm happy to be joined by Dr. Saeed Uzzaman to discuss the timely topic of changing patterns of warfare between India and Pakistan, which is also the title of his co-authored book with Rizwana Abbasi. So Dr. Saeed is the head of the International Relations Department at the National University of Modern Languages, Rawalpindi. And one particular emphasis in the book is on how advanced nuclear technologies and disruptive technologies have complicated crisis dynamics in the India-Pakistan bilateral relationship. And this is a particularly pertinent topic in light of the recent escalations between India and Pakistan after the shocking terrorist attack at Pahalgam in Indian-administered Jammu and Kashmir on the 22nd of April, which resulted in 26 targeted deaths. India blames Pakistan and it began Operation Sindoor in retaliation, launching a number of missile attacks in both Pakistan-administered Kashmir and Punjab. Pakistan would then respond militarily through Operation Bunyan Mahsus, but it was difficult to follow exactly what happened due to a significant amount of disinformation. And this conflict lasted 4 days from the 7th to the 10th of May, confirming that Jammu and Kashmir remains an ongoing flashpoint between the two nuclear-armed states. So today, Dr. Saeed will present on the topic of changing patterns of warfare between the two countries for roughly 40 minutes, and then we'll have 20 minutes for a question and answer session. So please keep your questions until the end. So welcome, Dr. Saeed, and thank you for sparing the time to share your expertise today. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mary. It's a pleasure to be part of this wonderful forum, Policy Research Institute for South Asia, and what a wonderful abbreviation it has, PRISA. So I really like that. So thank you so much for the kind invitation, and for sure this is very interesting topic, much debated, much discussed. And we'll be discussing this recent crisis, but at the same time, we'll be starting with the India-Pakistan conflict, particularly in the post-nuclear era, that how the conflict transformed. We'll be looking into that. And but before jumping into the topic, let me share the screen with the audience so that things become visible to them. Okay, Dr. Mary, is it visible now?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so we'll be, looking into this changing patterns of warfare between India and Pakistan, and this would be the sequence of my presentation, starting with my philosophy, then briefly introducing the book, that is Changing Patterns of Warfare Between India and Pakistan, Navigating the Impact of New and Disruptive Technologies. We'll be looking into it, a brief introduction, then we will be relating it to the conceptualization of this talk, and then for sure, in order to look into whatever is happening between India and Pakistan in the contemporary times. So we will first conceptualize the talk, and then we'll be moving on to this the analysis part. First, we'll be looking into this overt nuclearization and how nuclearization in South Asia basically impacted on the conflict dynamics between India and Pakistan doctrinally and technologically. And we will be looking into this cold start doctrine, just briefly focusing on modus operandi and the objectives of CSD. And then we'll be fastly moving to this offensive doctrinal changes from both sides, from Pakistani side and from Indian side, and how those doctrines basically impacted on the conflict dynamics. And for sure, we will be looking into some case studies covering both those covert nuclearization era and this overt nuclearization era. I mean to say, I will be starting from brass tacks, and we'll be concluding our case studies with this India-Pakistan 4-day crisis. Okay, we'll be discussing with little details. We'll be discussing this Uri crisis, and followed by this Pulwama Balakot crisis, and then we'll be looking into this disruptive technologies and how these disruptive are basically impacting on the warfare domain. And lastly, and most importantly, we'll be discussing the roadmap for peace and stability of South Asia. So to start with, basically, this is my philosophy, Dr. Mary. This is very much important and near to my heart. And we will start with in the name of peace for the people of South Asia and the world. The world needs, peace, and it needs people like us to play our part to make this world peaceful for all, irrespective of any discrimination. So keeping in view this premise, I'll be just briefly introducing about, my book. My book is basically our co-authored book. Basically, I and Dr. Rizwana Abbasi, a professor at NUML, and also, a fellow at Central European University. We wrote this book, and the title, as it is very much evident, on the screen, Changing Patterns of Warfare Between India and Pakistan, Navigating the Impact of New and Disruptive Technologies. And basically, this book was published 2023, and it is basically comprised of 6 chapters, and total 182 pages are there. And this book is proudly housed in some prestigious institutions, academic and policy institutions across the world, including this Massachusetts Institute of Technology, US Congress, and European Parliament. And in this specific book, what we tried to analyze was to look into the conflict dynamics between India and Pakistan with respect to the new and disruptive technologies. And we basically predicted about the future, keeping in view the established patterns. We looked into different empirical evidences, and then we predicted that what future holds for India and Pakistan. And there comes this India-Pakistan 4 days crisis, May 2025 crisis. This is what we somewhat predicted in our book. And this is what has happened. In today's talk, in this webinar, we will be looking into changing character of warfare between India and Pakistan. To start with, we'll briefly conceptualize this talk so that we can have better understanding about what has happened, what is happening, and what will happen. We know that enduring nature of rivalry, is there between India and Pakistan since both states, got independence from British. And since that time, both states fought major wars, minor wars, proxies, and phenomena such as surgical strike, and now this recent crisis, unprecedented, a totally distinct phenomenon. The enduring nature of rivalry, the persistence in rivalry, the consistency in rivalry is very much evident to academicians and practitioners. If we look into the security competition between India and Pakistan, we can divide the history of Pakistan into 2 phases. One is pre-nuclear phase, the other is post-nuclear phase. I must say at the outset that there are different factors which are attributed to India-Pakistan rivalry. I mean to say, partition in itself is a cause, then historical disputes, religious disputes, and at the same time, territorial disputes such as Kashmir, which is there, and on which both countries fought major wars, and then limited wars such as Kargil, and so many crises erupted, be that Uri, be that Pulwama, be that the recent crisis. It is linked to this Kashmir dispute, and for sure to terrorism, this violence. Nevertheless, if we divide India-Pakistan history into 2, eras. So one is pre-nuclear era, the other is post-nuclear era. In pre-nuclear era, we come to understanding that both states fought major wars like 48, 65, 71, This animosity, this militarism, which we witnessed in this pre-nuclear era, led to nuclearization of South Asia, where both states acquired this nuclear weapon. So when I say nuclearization of South Asia, so it means both covert nuclearization and overt nuclearization, which I'll be discussing later on during this talk. Now, after having these nuclear weapon in South Asia, so the conflict transformed. I mean to say, from major war, the conflict transformed to limited war and this low intensity conflict, and this and at the same time, this surgical strike stratagem which we can witness, which I mentioned earlier. So if we critically look into it, the scale of violence has reduced. Dr. Mary, this is very much important to understand with respect to conceptualization and understanding the phenomenon. The changing character of warfare is, is indicated, and it has basically two indicators. One is with respect to scale of violence. So if we look into scale of violence, so the character of warfare, it changed. The scale of violence has reduced, keeping in view the pre-nuclear era. If we make a comparison between pre-nuclear era and post-nuclear era, we come to understanding that the scale of violence has reduced, has decreased. And at the same time, the frequency of crisis has increased. Nevertheless, the important thing, which is the focus of this talk, is technologies, be that new technologies associated to nuclear weapon, or be that disruptive technologies, which we also reckon as emerging technologies. So these technologies basically impacted on the conflict dynamics, and it assisted both states not only, to confront each other militarily under the nuclear overhang in the nuclearized environment, to confront each other, to fight with each other, involving this compellence and deterrence. But also, we can say that the enduring nature of rivalry continued even under the nuclear overhang, making it a nuclear flashpoint. Nevertheless, when I say changing character of warfare, so it means we'll be looking into that how technological advancements supported by the doctrinal changes impacted on the conflict dynamics, which we refer to in our book, Changing Character of Warfare. So we'll be discussing this in detail as as the talk moves on. So the rationale of the talk or this webinar is to look into the impact of new and disruptive technologies on conflict dynamics between India and Pakistan, and the theoretical framework which we will be using is a coercive spectrum. A wonderful book, a magnificent book written by Thomas C. Schelling, Arms and Influence. He basically proposed a framework that is coercive spectrum, which includes basically two components. One is brute force, the other is coercion. Brute force involves major use of force, while compellence and deterrence involves threat of use of force or limited use of force. So this is the conceptual framework. I mean to say, we'll be looking into India-Pakistan conflict dynamics in the post-nuclear era with respect to coercive strategies, this compellence and deterrence. At the outset, I need to, for the convenience of the audience, I need to, define this compellence and deterrence. Basically, if you look into deterrence is, making your adversary understand that if you'll be coming up with offensive action, so for sure you will be dealt severely, and it will come up with lethal consequences. So that fear basically assists in averting the conflict. So in deterrence, we basically convince the belligerent or the adversary not to take certain action. And in comparison to this deterrence, if we look into this compellence, we come to understanding that compellence is basically the otherwise. I mean to say, it is totally the opposite dimension, where one party, for instance, party A, pushes the party B to do something. So this compellence and deterrence under the umbrella of coercive spectrum, this is the conceptual framework for today's, today's talk. To start with, I'll be quickly coming to this overt nuclearization. We know that covert nuclearization, that period started in 1980s and that lasted till May 1998. So in covert nuclear era, or under the covert nuclearization, we had two crises. One was brass tack crisis, the other was compound crisis. We came to understanding that when both states had this nuclear capability, so keeping in view the phenomenon of MAD, mutual assured destruction, both countries avoided to fight a major war. And that was witnessed in the covert nuclear era, in mid 1980s till May 1998. Nevertheless, the real thrust or the real impetus for the conflict or new dimension of the conflict in real terms started in this overt nuclearization era. India and Pakistan tested their nuclear devices in May 1998. India came up with like 5 tests. Pakistan responded with 6 to equalize the nuclear test that was conducted by India in 1974, 1 in 1974, and 5 in May 1998. So 6-6, that was the score. And after the nuclearization or after the acquisition of this nuclear weapon, both states introduced their nuclear doctrines. For sure, India announced the nuclear doctrine, and there is no official announcement of Pakistani nuclear doctrine. Nevertheless, we'll be referring to existing body of knowledge, and at the same time, the practitioners and the political statements, the political official statements, to understand what Pakistan's nuclear doctrine is. So starting with India came up with DND, draft of nuclear doctrine, and after the acquiring this nuclear weapon, and then they shifted or transformed that DND into IND in Indian nuclear doctrine 2003. So in that specific doctrine or draft, basically India proposed that they have no first use policy. They will not be using nuclear weapon against anyone first. Nevertheless, if we critically look into IND, I mean to say this 2003 doctrine, we come to understanding that they mentioned a provision that is, if any state or belligerent, if that party use nuclear weapons, chemical weapons or biological weapons, so they will be coming up with nuclear retaliation. So that made India's NFU bit ambiguous. Nevertheless, Pakistan basically, it didn't officially announce its nuclear doctrine. However, if we look into the existing body of knowledge, we come to understanding that Pakistan is pursuing this FU. But this is, I'm repeating again, this is not officially announced. And Pakistan intentionally kept its nuclear doctrine ambiguous in order to maintain deterrence stability. The important thing is, after nuclearization, we come to understanding that India and Pakistan, or this South Asia, hit on the stability instability paradox. We witnessed crisis under the nuclear overhang, first Kargil crisis, then Twin Peaks crisis, and then the Mumbai crisis. And if I mention the time frame, so that is between 1998 to 2015. So during this time frame, three major crises erupted, and all these three crises, there was a threat, there was a risk of escalation of crisis into a major war, and then ultimately use of nuclear weapon. We understand that Kargil crisis was the first crisis after this overt nuclearization, and that crisis ended with the intervention or mediation of United States of America. The role of United States of America remained very much significant. Still, it is significant. I mean to say, if you look into the crisis, whatever crisis erupted, whenever, it is the United States of America which played a crisis manager role, be that compound crisis, be that Kargil crisis, be that Twin Peaks crisis, Mumbai crisis, Uri crisis, Pulwama Balakot crisis, or this 4 days, May 2025 India-Pakistan crisis. It is the United States of America which played the crisis manager role. And for sure, this role is very much important. So coming back to Kargil crisis, it was this United States of America and the intervention of the Clinton administration which assisted both states to avoid this this conflict to escalate to all-out war or nuclear war. Okay, now after the Kargil crisis, there was a terrorist attack on the Indian Parliament, and that erupted this Twin Peaks crisis. A standoff, a major mobilization of force were witnessed by the world. One of the massive after this World War II. And eyeball to eyeball contacts of military forces were there, and there was a high risk of war between the two. India wanted to take punitive measures against Pakistan because India blamed Pakistan, for supporting the non-state actors for committing or for launching this terrorist attack in the Indian capital. Not only in the Indian capital, but also in Srinagar. While Pakistan negated the charges, and Pakistani official, be that political, be that military, they said that we are not part of this, this whole violence. And at the same time, mobilization of forces were there, and the world witnessed, as I mentioned earlier, the massive mobilization of forces after this World War II. Thanks to the diplomacy of United States of America, and the United States of America, mediated, and that crisis ended. Now, Dr. Mary, we should be very much clear. Now, on one hand, we have nuclear weapons. On the other hand, crises are erupting. And why crises are erupting? Terrorism is there, violence is there, low intensity conflict is there. And, both states are learning how to fight war under this nuclear overhang. This makes the South Asia one of the distinct case study in the world. There is no evidence that nuclear weapon states, confront each other like the way they did after this this post-nuclear era. And thanks to this, I would say, the mediation of United States of America, and at the same time nuclear deterrence. It was this nuclear deterrence and United States' role as a crisis manager which averted wars, during the Kargil crisis or Twin Peaks crisis, that was in 2001 and 2002. Nevertheless, India failed to mobilize its forces in according with its existing doctrine, that is Sundarji doctrine. Sundarji doctrine was basically proposed or devised in 1981 by India. So India failed to mobilize its troop efficiently and timely, which basically provided a chance to Pakistan to counter mobilize, and at the same time it assisted space to the international community to intervene, to mediate, and bring that crisis to end. So that, failure in Operation Parakaram, together with a learning lesson from Kargil, what India did. India came up with the Cold Star Doctrine, CSD, in 2004. And what was basically the modus operandi? The modus operandi was, to develop IBGs, integrated battle groups, and launching attacks at LOC, at international border. And the objective was to compel Pakistan, basically to compel Pakistan in line with their, charges or blame that Pakistan support, non-state actors, the terrorist outfits. So the objective was to compel Pakistan to stop supporting the non-state actors. On the other hand, Pakistan, for sure, Pakistan rejected those blames, and Pakistan came up with a doctrinal response. I mean to say, the CSD was very ambitious in a way that how you can wage a limited war involving IBGs against a nuclear weapon state. So what Pakistan did, the threat perception in Islamabad pushed Pakistan to come up with a doctrine, or come up with a strategy in order to deter India. So what Pakistan did? Pakistan did three things. First, FSD, full spectrum deterrence. Pakistan came up with full spectrum deterrence covering the entire spectrum of conflict, starting from tactical to operational to strategic. And that was basically a response to India's CSD, and to put cold waters on, on this CSD. And along with this full spectrum deterrence, which was a response to India's CSD, Pakistan developed tactical nuclear weapon, which had a range of like 60 to 70 kilometer. And Pakistani officials stated that if India will be implementing the CSD, so we will be coming up with launching tactical nuclear weapons. So this FSD, tactical nuclear weapon, together with these two things, the professional readiness, I mean to say, Pakistani military forces, armed forces underwent massive military exercises to increase their professional readiness. So these three things, FSD, full spectrum deterrence, tactical nuclear weapon, professional readiness, nuclear deterrence, the fourth component, and the fifth, the US role, because US was engaged in Afghanistan under this, this war on terror. So it was not in the interest of United States of America that India and Pakistan confront each other. So these five components basically assisted India and Pakistan to avert basically a major war under this nuclear overhang. Nevertheless, the India's structural and organizational weaknesses in the Indian armed forces, that was also one of the reasons which India, couldn't manage to implement this CSD. So all these three crises didn't erupt to a major war. I mean to say, Kargil crisis, this Twin Peaks crisis, and Mumbai crisis. Mumbai attacked, the attack on Indian metropolitan city that occurred in 2008. So that basically once again erupted a crisis between the two nuclear armed states, and once again mobilization of forces was there, and Pakistan, be that Pakistan or India, they they mobilized their air forces. And there was once again, as I mentioned earlier, thanks to this US mediation, which basically averted basically averted a major war. So what I want to establish is, in this era from 1998 to 2015, what happened? Three crises erupted. Three crises did not escalate to major war. So the crisis converted, the conflict between India and Pakistan converted from major war to limited war, that is Kargil crisis, and then low intensity conflict. I mean to say, if you look into the scale of violence, so it significantly decreased. So the scale of violence decreased, but the number of crises under the nuclear overhang, so the frequency increased. And at the same time, the technological development and the doctrinal changes basically it created, problem for maintaining strategic stability in South Asia. And it was not just India who basically, suffered from this violence. look into Pakistan, Pakistan is one of the frontline. Pakistan remained one of the frontline state in this war on terror, and there are significant successes of Pakistan armed forces, against the terrorism. Nevertheless, Pakistan if you look into this Lahore, if so many other crises, so many other terrorist incidents. I mean to say, recently, if you look into Jafar Express, so Pakistan also blamed India for it. I mean to say, India blamed Pakistan for terrorism, Pakistan blamed India for terrorism. So it is not a one-way traffic, it is a two-way traffic. Both states were blaming each other. And at the same time, nuclear stockpile was on increase. Ambitious offensive doctrines were on increase. When the states acquire nuclear weapon states, so the rationalistic behavior is to avoid offensive doctrinal changes. But in case of India and Pakistan, we can observe that offensive doctrinal changes were introduced. Now, if you look into India in 2004, it came up with CSD, Cold Start Doctrine. And then in 2017 and 2018, they developed this Joint Doctrine of Indian Armed Forces 2017 and Joint and Land Warfare Doctrine of 2018. So these two doctrines are, as my understanding, as India failed to implement CSD, so you can say it was critique on CSD and at the same time extension of CSD. So India devised, these doctrines, and what was the objective? The objective was to launch offensive, smart strikes, accurate strikes, precise strikes against Pakistan. And we know that that India traditionally it says that it states that they have this minimum deterrence posture. But in this Joint Doctrine of Indian Armed Forces, if you look into it, so their posture is credible deterrence (CD). So there is a doctrinal and theoretical debate. I mean to say, this compellence and at the same time this CD is not compatible to no first use. The credible minimum deterrence is not compatible to no first use. The compellence strategy which was employed by India is not compatible to NFU, no first use. So what India is up to? Is India on a road to shift nuclear posture? So this is a $1 million question. What Indian official or state says, it says that we have this no first use posture, and we are not changing our posture. Nevertheless, it is important to understand that these doctrinal changes in shape of JDIF 2017, LWD 2018, they are pointing to change in nuclear posture. They are moving from counter value to counter force, FU to NFU to FU. And I'll be linking the same to, to the recent crisis. If you look into 4 days India-Pakistan crisis, this recent crisis, May 2025, we come to understanding that India attacked military installations of Pakistan. So this is one of the evidence that India is shifting from counter value to counter force. And this also manifests that there is change in strategic culture of India, where India pursues, this first use. So if India officially or even latently, be that manifest, be that latent, if it changes its posture from NFU to FU, from counter value to counter force, where preemptive strike, preventive strike, precise strikes, accurate strikes are the pattern of engagement, what would happen to this deterrent stability? What would happen to strategic stability? What would happen to peace and stability in South Asia? So if we now, what India intends to do with these doctrinal changes, be that JDIF 2017 or LWD 2018, India intended to launch a surgical strike. Now, if we look into this 2016 crisis, Uri crisis, there was a terrorist attack resulting in killing of 18 Indian soldiers in 2016. What India did in the night of 28 and 29 September, India launched an offensive, which Indian official claimed that they launched a surgical strike, ground surgical strike across the LOC to target terrorist outfits. And that was once again India's compelling strategy. I mean to say, India intended to compel Pakistan to act against non-state actors. What Pakistan did, Pakistan counter mobilized its forces, and at the same time, Pakistani officials, Pakistani state denied any surgical strike. Pakistan invalidated any ground surgical strike in 2016. So India wanted to establish a surgical strike as a new normal. Pakistan invalidated that surgical strike. And there is a question mark on Pakistan's response. If Pakistan absorbed that strike, so maybe this is one of the de-escalation tactics, and that was basically pointed by Dr. Mueed Yusuf in his article that was published by Arms Control. So what I mean to say that India launched a surgical strike based in compelling strategy, and Pakistan counter mobilized the forces and to maintain deterrence. And once again, United States of America emerged as a crisis manager. Dr. Mary, it's very important to understand that initially, for the first time, United States of America was reluctant to play its role as a crisis manager, and that basically boosted India's confidence to conduct a surgical strike. And nevertheless, when India launched this strike, as per India's claim, which Pakistan invalidated, there was a threat, there was a risk of conflict escalation. United States of America initiated the diplomatic efforts, and once again, United States of America de-escalated the conflict. Nevertheless, the crisis in this Uri crisis didn't escalate to major war. However, once again, it is an empirical evidence that stability and stability paradox is in play. After this nuclearization of South Asia, this Kargil crisis, Twin Peaks crisis, Mumbai attack, and then Uri crisis, these are empirical evidence of stability and stability paradox applicability. And at the same time, the application of this coercive spectrum, where Pakistan launched compellence in Kargil. Nevertheless, it adopted deterrence strategy in Twin Peaks crisis, in Mumbai attack, that is Mumbai crisis 2008, and Uri crisis 2016. And on Indian side, India maintained deterrence in Kargil crisis. It responded to Pakistan's offensive, and then in Twin Peaks crisis and in Mumbai crisis and in Uri crisis, India employed compelling strategy where threat of use of force and limited use of force was the strategy. And now coming to this Pulwama Balakot crisis, once again, a terrorist incident occurred in Pulwama, killing Indian troops, like 40 troops were killed. And once again, that terrorist incident resulted in eruption of crisis, a severe crisis, where for the first time India conducted surgical strike deep inside Pakistan across the international border in Balakot. So this was unprecedented. This was first of its kind since 1971. We can witness, there was surgical strike in 1971. After 1971, there was no air power used across the international border. So this was first of its kind. Now, was it a new normal? Was it crossing the new frontiers? For sure, it crossed the new frontier. And was it end of India's strategic restraint approach. Yes, it was end of India's strategic restraint approach. India launched surgical strike on 26th of February, and Pakistan responded on the other day, the very next day on 27th, with a response by using its air force and striking into Indian occupied Kashmir. So Pakistan responded with retaliatory strike. Now, India conducted surgical strike.
Dr. Saeed, just to quickly say that you've got 5 minutes for your presentation, if that's okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for for mentioning this. Now, this cyclical action-reaction military engagement between India and Pakistan, this was basically a new pattern of engagement. And this new pattern of engagement basically was very dangerous and risky. I mean to say, both countries have nuclear weapons, so how you can go that far? Nevertheless, this was new pattern of engagement, but we need to understand that there is a difference between India's new normal and the new normal which we mentioned in our book. India's new normal is conducting surgical strike unilaterally by India in the wake of any terrorist act. Nevertheless, in our book, we have discussed that if India will be launching surgical strikes, it will be coming with the retaliatory strike from Pakistan based in its policy of QPQP, quid pro quo plus, which is compatible to full spectrum deterrence. So this was the new pattern of engagement. Now, this is Dr. Mary, this is second last slide. Now, here we come to this disruptive technologies and this new warfare domain. The emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, quantum computing, machine learning, hypersonic missiles, space-based technologies, cyber-based technologies, lethal autonomous weapons such as drones. These are the emerging technologies, disruptive technologies, which the world is, witnessing. United States of America, Russia, China, and all other great powers, what they are doing, or middle powers, they are investing hugely in research and development to acquire these technologies. So India and Pakistan are not exception to this. Pakistan and India, they invested in these technologies in order to, to meet the challenges of the contemporary times. I mean to say, if you look into this, this 4 days May 2025 conflict, starting from the middle night of 6th, 7th May, lasted till 10th May, what happened? Drones were used, cruise missiles were used, and there are will be conducted. We will come to know that hypersonic missiles were used or not, but space-based technologies, cyber-based technologies, electronic warfare were used by both states. And yes, this is unprecedented. And it is very dangerous for the peace and stability of South Asia. There was a terrorist incident in Pahalgam in Indian-occupied Kashmir, and that conflict once again led to this massive, unprecedented, risky crisis, 4-day crisis. Military installations were targeted, civilian installations were targeted. India started with targeting civilian installation, then moved on to military installation. Pakistan responded back by targeting military installations. So what I mean to say, the doctrinal changes of India, if you look into it, so these preemptive strike, preventive strike, precise strikes by India are in compatibility and in synchronization with India's doctrinal changes. What Pakistan did, the way Pakistan responded, that is basically in line with this, its doctrine, that is full spectrum deterrence, and its policy option, that is QPQP, quid pro quo plus. So these disruptive technologies are, pushing South Asia into new warfare domain. And, this is basically resulting in deterrence erosion. Quickly, if you allow me to share empirical evidence, there were 8 crises from covert nuclearization to overt nuclearization. I mean to say, from Brest crisis till 4 days May 2025 crisis. In 7 times, United States of America played crisis manager role, and that averted major war. This 4 days May 2025 conflict, President Trump administration played an active role in order to avert this dangerous conflict to escalating into a major war. So if we look into empirical evidence, United States of America has a very important role in this South Asia, despite the nuclear learning by India and Pakistan. And at the same time, if I link it to conceptual framework, out of 8 times, 7 times India used compellence strategy, while Pakistan employed deterrence strategy 7 times. I mean to say, Pakistan employed compellence strategy once, India employed compellence strategy 7 times. Pakistan employed deterrence strategy 7 times, and for sure, as I mentioned earlier, compellence strategy 1 time. So the application of coercive spectrum and deterrence, and strategic stability and stability paradox, it is very much evident. Now, just allow Dr. Mary 1 or 2 minutes more. This is the roadmap for peace and stability of South Asia. Both states need to minimize their reliance on offensive doctrine or offensive war fighting strategies. Both states need to come up with curbing proxies to constrain adventurism. Joint anti-terrorism mechanism, JATM, is one of the forum. The SCO is another forum. The SARC is another forum. So these states are required to use these forums in order to curb proxies and terrorism, so that this region can, the billions of people living over here can experience this peace and prosperity which they deserve. And importantly, the US role as a crisis manager is very much important. In Uri crisis, Pulwama Balakot crisis, and this May 2025 crisis, United States of America reluctant initially, and that basically resulted in this crisis and using of this limited use of force. So it is important for United States of America to play a crisis manager role even in the future time. Then this Kashmir dispute, out of the box solution is very much important. Both states, India and Pakistan, in line with United Nations resolution, need to resolve this Kashmir dispute. So terrorism and Kashmir disputes are at the heart, at the core of this whole scenario, whatever we are witnessing. And this offensive technologies, be that conventional technologies, be that nuclear technologies, be that emerging technologies, both states need to minimize production of these technologies, because this arm race is going nowhere but towards catastrophe and destruction. So there is a need to revive confidence building measure, and Lahore Declaration is one of the important policy measure or policy step which India and Pakistan can take. And at the same time, both states need to revive strategic restraint regime in order to ensure strategic stability in the region. And quickly, lastly, SARC is very much important. The SARC should be made functional. It is in the interest of the people of South Asia. It is in the interest of India and Pakistan that SARC is made to functional it, to make it operational, so that this forum is used to manage all these problems which I mentioned during this my talk. So this was all about my talk. So to one concluding line, if we look into it, the character of warfare has transformed. The scale of violence has decreased. The frequency of crisis has increased. And at the same time, the technological advancement assisted both states to fight under the nuclear overhang. And that is supported by their doctrinal changes. This is dangerous. And the road map, which you are looking at the screen right now, this is a roadmap for peace and stability of South Asia, which I discussed earlier. I thank you so much, Dr. Mary, for providing me the opportunity to express my thoughts. And sorry for inconvenience if I've taken a little more time, but the complexity and intricacies of the topic, I was bound to do so. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Saeed. And that was a very informative presentation, and as you say, very relevant in light of the recent escalations between Pakistan and India. I think we have time for one or two questions if they're quick. We have one hand up already. So I think that's Saeed Uzzaman, if you'd like to ask your question.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Thank you very much for the insightful and thoughtful perspectives on the changing warfare patterns between Pakistan and India. Sir, just a little bit of my thoughts on your book. I was fortunate enough to go through your book a couple of weeks ago, and for quite some time I was in search of a book who could put my concepts of military strategy, history, and the international relations into perspective. And I must congratulate you and thank you at the same time for doing so in a very effective manner. And sir, coming over to your presentation and the concepts or the theoretical perspective that you have rightly highlighted in your book, my question is regarding the deterrence erosion concept. And we have witnessed during this post-Pahalgam conflict that India remained oblivion of Pakistan's retaliatory actions. I think this irresponsible or this behavior of our enemy can has the tendency to lead to inadvertent escalation. And what do you think? I just want to take your views on this concept of deterrence as a concept that India remained oblivion of our actions under Operation Bunyanum Marsoos, and amidst this complex regional dynamics and the era of misinformation and disinformation, what do you think? What immediate measures can we take to avoid a nuclear war in future, keeping in view the theoretical framework of coercion, as you have mentioned? And just one line on the misinformation campaign, not a question, just my views, that as per the Global Economic Forum report 2024, they have labeled misinformation and disinformation as a major threat to mankind. So, and we have witnessed that in the recent crisis as well. So I think the actions by Pakistan was quite responsible, and we need to work more on this, and you have rightly covered this domain as well in your book. So I thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much, Uzzaman, for the kind words. Thank you so much for reading. Thank you so much for thinking. Thank you so much for sharing. And thanks for your questions. First, if you look into Pakistan conflict dynamics in post-nuclear force, and they are using force against each other, and now they've crossed the internet, not limited to LOC. Now, what deterrence is about? Deterrence is about averting a war, averting violence, and what is happening between India and Pakistan, particularly this Pulwama Balakot crisis and 4 days May 2025 conflict. I think we have entered into new warfare domain based on this new and disruptive technologies, emerging technologies, and their use in the conflict is basically resulting in they are pushing us to redefine, to reconceptualize deterrence. In our book, we have mentioned that this is deterrence erosion. It is not to say that deterrence stability is completely gone. No, it has just eroded that deterrence stability. Nevertheless, if, as I mentioned in my, roadmap for peace and stability in South Asia, if those steps, along with some other, if they are not taken, so I think that the continuous doctrinal changes and technological advancement will further lead to deterrence erosion in South Asia, which will be detrimental to strategic stability in South Asia and for sure peace and stability in South Asia. As far as your question of misinformation and disinformation is concerned, no doubt about it, this 4 days May 2025 crisis, what is happening? Both sides are claiming victory. For sure, both experienced, this damages to civilians, to military installation, and we know that during that aerial, confrontation, 6 Indian jets were, India lost 6 jets, and at the same time, India launched strikes. They used BrahMos against Pakistan. They targeted Pakistan military installation, military bases that led to damage to the military installations. So what I mean to say, keeping in view these developments, both sides are claiming their victory. And what they are doing, they are selectively using the information based on their narrative. Now, what is required to be done? Let the dust settle down. Let the research done. Once we will be doing research objectively, so there comes the time we will be coming to understanding that what were the facts. No doubt about it. If you look into the empirical evidence, Pakistan Air Force outshined Indian Air Force. 6-0 is the score. On the other hand, if you look into India's strike, so it raises questions on Pakistan missile defense system. So I mean to say, both countries, people or society or the leadership or the military leadership at both sides, they can chant slogans. They can say that they have won this war. Nevertheless, I think that research is required to be done so that we come to objective analysis of the phenomenon, whatever has happened. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saeed. And I can see that there are 2 more hands up, but I'm afraid we've run out of time. So I don't know if Dr. Saeed's happy to put his email address in the chat, and people can always get in touch with him after the session if they'd like to get an answer to their question. But again, thank you so much to Dr. Saeed for taking the time to speak to us today. And I think it sounds like there'll be a number of people who will be checking out your book online, seeing as it's so relevant and pertinent at the moment. So thank you also to the people who wanted to ask some questions, and we look forward to hopefully welcoming you again to some more webinars hosted by PRISA. But thank you again to Dr. Saeed, and we hope to welcome you onto the platform again in the future.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mary. Thank you so much, PRISA, for providing me the opportunity to express my perspective and to present our book in this, this prestigious platform. And for sure, these kind of debates and discussions will assist us to enhance our discussion regarding the phenomenon under discussion. And at the same time, the most important thing, to devise a strategy, a roadmap to establish peace in this South Asia, not only in the South Asia, but the world. The people across the world deserve peace. We all need to unite together to play our part to make this world a better place for living for all, where peace is there, prosperity is there. So once again, thank you so much, Dr. Mary. Thank you so much, PRISA, for providing me the opportunity. Stay blessed.
Bahut shukriya, wa khadafis, and thank you to everyone for joining us today.